to accept the Palestinians or to accept Palestine as a country within the world community or not. It was a big vote that the Palestinians have been actually trying to do this for a long time. It took a lot of years, a lot of agonies, a lot of sadness. But finally, the United States, the United Nations, has voted to accept Palestine as a state within the nations of the world. Palestine was born. It was born last Thursday in the United Nations. So what exactly took place before that? Well, many people, not many people, few countries, mainly Israel and the United States, have tried their best to stop the Palestinians from actually going through with the UN vote. They have tried their best, everything they can do, whatever pressure they can muster to put on the Palestinians, represented by their president, Mahmoud Abbas. They have tried it. Hillary Clinton went down there and talked to him a couple of days before the vote and told him, don't cross the line. You are crossing the line. Don't cross the line. But he did. He did not take her threats, even though he understood that her threat was very serious. But an Israel threatened a lot. But the United States and Israel could not actually keep Palestine from swinging those doors at the United Nations and entering at the United Nations as a state. And actually we do have a picture that shows Palestine pushing its way into the United Nations. And once they find it, they will put it. But anyway, here we go. That's very much what happened. That's very much what happened. The United States tried to stop it. The Israeli government, represented by their Prime Minister Netanyahu, tried to stop it from actually going to the UN, but it did not work. Now, what does that mean, though? I mean, you know, we're not passing out cigars and everything. It's not a country yet, because you're not a country. Well, let me rephrase that. You're not a full member in the United Nations, which means, what does a full member mean? Well, you can vote and you can present resolutions, bills. That's basically what you can do. You can petition, but of course, you know, they can do that from other people. Other countries can do that for them. Now, the Palestinians have been a member as an entity observer in the United Nations, and now it was upgraded last Thursday into a state, a member state, an observer member state, which you will have most of the privileges of a state, except you cannot vote. Well, I think Palestine can vote or can wait on not being able to vote. Now, well, who voted for Palestine and who voted against Palestine? Very simple. The map in front of you, it shows a map of the world where Canada and the United States has voted no to Palestine. 138 countries voted yes, 9 countries voted no, and 41 countries abstained. Most of the countries that abstained, actually, they were more like European countries, who very much, like Germany, for instance, they really could not, because, you know, the anti-Semitic and Hitler and the Holocaust and all that stuff. So they said, okay, even though we want to vote for Palestine, but we are going to abstain. Other countries like England abstained. And but that's not what we want to talk about, the countries that abstained. We want to talk about the red countries. You know, when you take the United States, and you know why the United States actually voted no, because we're not free people to actually speak our mind and vote our will. We're not. We had to vote as to what Israel told us, because, I mean, there's no way on earth that the United States would have voted yes, because if the United States could vote yes, it would have, last year, if you remember, the Palestinians went to the United Nations asking to be recognized as a state through the way of how to become a state, which is the United Nations Security Council. And since in the United Nations Security Council, we have 5 members out of 15 that actually permanent members, they stay on the board. The other 10 change, but those 5 have veto powers. And a veto power of 1 will make everything, the resolution, null and void. And that's what the United States has done last year in 2011 when they actually vetoed a resolution in the Security Council, the United Nations Security Council, to make Palestine as a state. Well, it did not happen in 2011, so the Palestinians said, we go into the General Assembly. Now, the General Assembly, that's where all the countries in the world got together last Thursday and voted on Palestine. 138 countries said yes. 41 said, no, we're not voting. We have other considerations. But if you take Canada and the United States, and Canada, by the way, is as bad, entrenched in Zionist power, worse than, no, nothing can be worse than the United States, but very close to it. Maybe because of the geography, I don't know. It wasn't like that, though. Canada was almost a free country with free will, not anymore. So Canada and the United States, and then you have the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic is a country that split after the fall of the Soviet Union, and basically it depends on handout from the United States. And the United States went in there and actually convinced those people, because they're having huge energy problem. They have energy crisis in that country. It's poor. It's one of those like Eastern European countries that kind of fallen off when the Soviet Union had fallen, and it split away from Czechoslovakia, and now you have the Czech Republic, part of Czechoslovakia. Well, the United States actually told them, we are going to build you a nuclear plan, so it'll take care of your energy problem. They voted no. That's 3 out of the 9. Well, the rest of them, ladies and gentlemen, Panama, which is, we went in there a few years back, snatched their president, put him in jail in Miami, installed a government that we can control. So it's a puppet. But this is where the strength, the core of the allies with the United States and Israel are little island called Micronesia. Now, these islands, ladies and gentlemen, used to be American colonies. There are about 607 islands with total population of about 100,000 people all over that area you are looking at now. All these used to be American colonies. They got their independence from the United States back in 1986. And in consideration, the United States said that we will administer your affairs, and in return, we're going to let your people come and work in the United States without having to actually apply for a work permit. These are very poor countries. The main thing that they do there is basically fisheries and farming. Some of these countries, ladies and gentlemen, like you see Palau sitting up there on the left, and then you see the Marshall Island, and then you see Nauru. All these countries actually, there's about 9,000, now this is Nauru, there's about 9,000 people live on there. And the other one, there's about 20,000 people living on that island. It's like 607. Can you imagine when you have 100,000 people living on 607 islands, like how many per island? You can imagine. So that's the allies. That's who voted against Palestine. I guarantee you, if you go to all these nations up there and you ask, hey, do you know where Palestine is? I guarantee they probably never heard of it. They never heard of it. An island with 9,000 people, very poor. You can imagine how much technology they have. These people are living basically on what the United States can. And by the way, the Palestinians, and I've heard this from leaders in the Palestinian leadership, it's like, what is going on with Micronesia? What do they have against us? Who these people are? Well, they don't really know you. That's the answer that I give to one leader. It's like they don't know anything about Palestine, but this is the deal. This is a country that was an American colony, got its independence in 1986, and basically it does, that's why it always votes. And if you go back to the United Nations, actually, when they were voting on any of these issues with Israel, you will find that it is the United States, Israel, and Micronesia. Go to all the United Nations resolutions, you will find these three countries voting against the Palestinians and the whole world. Because remember, the whole world wanted a Palestinian state. Well, anyway, we are, just to kind of put everything that we are doing in perspective, we have a couple of videos that we would like to share with you, because I'm sure you probably did not see, because the American media did not really cover this issue last Thursday as, I mean, this was like huge. This was huge in the world. You know, for Palestine to become a country, this is what the world wants. This is what the Palestinians want. But that's not what Israel wants. And therefore, that's not what the United States wanted. And the cronies in the United States, the media puppets, the media Zionist handlers, they did not want to share the celebration with you. But other countries did. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Baltimore. In New York on Thursday afternoon, the United Nations General Assembly made what many people consider a historic vote, raising the status of the Palestinian Authority from a non-member entity to a non-member state. The vote was 138 yes in favor of the resolution, 9 no, and 41 abstentions. Now joining us to talk about the significance of this vote is Phyllis Bennis. She's a fellow and director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. She's the author of many books, including Understanding the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict, a primer, and Challenging Empire, How People, Governments, and the UN Defy U.S. Power. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be back.
So, how important a decision is this?
Well, it's important in two ways. The international sort of institutional importance is not that it's going to change anything about the Palestinians' presence at the UN. They still will not be members of the UN. They still will not be able to vote or to introduce resolutions. What they will have is a recognition from the UN General Assembly, a very high body of the UN, saying you're a state. You're a non-member state, but you're a state. The significance of that is that it gives them the opportunity to use that status of a state to do other things, most notably to sign the Rome Treaty creating the International Criminal Court, and thus become a member of the International Criminal Court. As a member of the court, there's at least the possibility, if there were to be political will, there's at least the possibility that they could initiate an effort to bring criminal charges against Israeli officials, military and political, and potentially even US officials who may be responsible for supporting them, for enabling them, and for funding them, for war crimes that may have been committed on Palestinian territory. That's a long way off. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but it's an interesting step towards that.
Okay. Well, like Phyllis actually said, it's not on the ground, not much is going to happen because Israel still occupies Palestine. But what happens is this: Israel has been telling these lies to the world, and the United States have been helping them, or has been helping them doing that, where they're saying, well, we're not occupiers. We believe in peace. We want to live in peace with these people. But we have a problem over the land. You know, we're not sure. We have a dispute. We're not sure who this land belongs to. Well, the world spoke clearly last Thursday and said it's Palestinian land. That is the State of Palestine. You see, never before has that designation been labeled on the Palestinians as the questions: are they a nation? Is it a country? Is it a state? Well, now the whole world voted and said, yes, they are a state. What does that mean? It means that Israel is an occupier, is a foreign occupier of that land. That's what it means. It's not a disputed territories anymore, because that's basically what the world said, that this is not a disputed territories, that this is right here is Palestine, and you are a foreign occupier. Now what happens, foreign occupiers, when they commit, you know, we have seen you many pictures that we are going to share with you, what Israel actually had done with the Palestinians. What they have done, the killings, the bombings, destroying their homes, killing their children for 65 years. These are the scenes that the Palestinian people have went through for 65 years, nothing but killing, killing and killing and oppressing. That's who the Palestinian people are. That's how they lived. That's what they went through. And Israel got away with it. This army, this military that the United States has paid for. This Air Force was paid for not by Israelis. They did not pay for it. American taxpayers paid for it to do the pictures, to do the damage to the Palestinians, their lives, their livelihoods, bomb the heck out of them, paid for by you, the American taxpayer. For 65 years, Palestinians have endured this. They have endured their homes being bombed, their children being stepped on by grown-up Israeli soldiers. They also endured these, they call them Israeli settlers, Jewish settlers, illegal settlers. I call them illegal thugs with guns, because Israel had brought those people to Palestine. They brought them from all over the world. Jews from wherever they can gather them to come in, live on Palestinian land, and actually kill Palestinians, because these thugs are armed. Now, with what happened last Thursday, and this is exactly what they do. These are Jews. They teach their kids how to hate. They teach their kids how to kill. Now, that's not the image you had of little nice Israel, that we, the United States, share their values. No. You did not see these Jewish girls putting these messages on these shells before they are fired to kill innocent people, to kill innocent civilians. You didn't see that. Now, who is raising their children to hate? By the time these children become 18 years old, they go into the They call it the Israel Defense Force. Is it? Did you see that? Defense? Now, who really, is this a defense? Or is this an offense? Do you defend yourself with airplanes against children laying in the streets? No. This is an offense force that is paid for, and what they wanted to do is eliminate the Palestinian people. Eliminate them totally and completely. But now the world told them, wait a minute, you've done that long enough. That is Palestine. It is not Israel. Now you need to learn how to live with them. Let's share with you actually what happened at the United Nations last Thursday.
Those against, and also the abstentions. Croatia votes against. Croatia is voting.
The General Assembly is now voting on draft resolution A/67/L28 entitled Status of Palestine in the United Nations. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the board?
Well, there are a lot of countries are missing, no? This one doesn't work. This one doesn't seem to work.
No, there are some countries, some people on there. I can. Exactly. The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the voting is as follows. In favor, 138. Opposed, 9. Abstentions, 41. I now call a short pause in the proceeding of this meeting.
Okay? Now you might ask yourself, how many, back in 1947, how many voted for Israel? Now remember, 138 countries voted for Palestine. Only 37 countries voted for Israel in 1949. See, Israel announced its independence in 1948. It was refused membership twice in the UN because they very much took over the country when England decided in 1947 that it can no longer handle the mandate over Palestine. So they got out, and as soon as the British got out, Israel was born, and with full-fledged army, with a whole, it was everything. And they announced the establishment of Israel in 1948. Well, the United Nations Security Council rejected them twice. And then finally, after they were able to squeeze some arms and put pressure on politicians around the world, they were able to get 37 votes and they were voted in. So I think the result of last Thursday speaks for itself of whom the world think the Palestinian people are and who the Israelis are. Put everything in its perspective. You have an occupier force that came from Europe, established a country called Israel over a land that was occupied and for thousands of years by these people who probably, many of them, were the original Hebrews, the Israelites, the Semites, not the blind or blonde blue eyes. But even with that, the Palestinians said, hey, look, we can live with them. They said that a long time ago. Now, let me show you a map back in 1947. Now, the reason November 29th, because on November 29th, 1947, there was a partition plan by the United Nations to partition Palestine between Jews and Arabs. And when we say Arabs, it means Christians and Muslims. The orange areas that you are looking at, or whatever that color is, these are basically where the Jews have lived in 1947. But even though they did not hardly have not even 8% of the land, on November 29th, the United Nations had actually partitioned Palestine into two states, one Israel and one for the Arabs, and Israel got 54% of the land. How they figured that out, I have no idea. On top of that, the population, they were less than a third, but yet they got more than half. This is the, right before the partition plan, that's how actually it looked like. This is in 1948 when I'm sorry, this is 1947 during the partition plan when England had mandate over that piece of land there. Now, in 1947, we do have another map. It's a bunch of maps that we had shown on this program many of times. The first one on the left looks very much like the one we were looking at now. And then the partition plan, which is the second one from left, that's what the United Nations said. The green is Palestine and the white is Israel. Israel was established. Palestine was not. And Israel in 1967 took over that whole piece of land. The green, the white, and everything else. Now, the one on the right is very much and it's not even that much left for the Palestinians. And on top of that, Israel had, you see the green, the one on the right, Israel had brought in their own people. There's almost 1 million, they call them settlers. You know, I really don't like to use that term because when you say settlers, you know, you think of, you know, like the old Europeans when they settled into Oklahoma, you know, going there with a carriage and a horse and, you know, half of the kids die before they reach the Oklahoma territory. No, that's not the kind of settlers we're talking about. We are talking about settlers that they came in with their guns. The United States built, well, the United States money, built homes for these people, much better than the homes people in the United States live in. They came in with guns, and you've seen some of the pictures for these settlers. when they go in with their guns, with terrorizing. These are not settlers, they are terrorists. Because when you are a civilian and you have a gun and you use that gun to kill other civilians, and you teach your children how to shoot so they can hate on Arabs, that's not settlers. That's basically thugs with guns. Now, the Palestinians have endured a lot, but the Palestinian spirit never dies. It doesn't matter what they go through, their spirit will always be. You know, we have a picture I wanted to show everybody where a mother, where her house was completely gone, but yet, I mean, look, over the rubble of her house, but yet she had the spirit of, I don't care, I have my son or daughter, and I'm going to live. Now, that's the Palestinian spirit that has been there for over 65 years. No matter what they went through, they always got up and moved on. Until last Thursday, when the world, for the first time, said, when the world said, yes, you are a people. Now, of course, Israel was not too happy with that, and the United States was not too happy. I'm going to show you just a little, probably about a minute, of the response that Susan Rice actually had. Susan Rice is you saw her picture, she's the United States UN ambassador. That's her, probably on the phone talking to Netanyahu probably and saying, look, now this is after the meeting. She's consulting with the Israeli UN ambassador and probably telling him, don't worry, we're behind you. Remember, tell your buddies I want to be the Secretary of State in the United States. Because that's who's going to be the next Hillary Clinton. She's going to be the one representing us on the world stage. And if Zionists are not on board, well, guess what? She's not going to make it. So she's going to do everything she can to tell these people, I'm with you. But you know something? Deep down inside, she knows the truth. Deep down inside, Hillary Clinton knows the truth. Deep down inside, Barack Obama knows the truth. But they can't. They can't. Their hands are tied behind their backs. They have, you know, we have mentioned this to you many times, and we showed you their pictures when they are at the wall, at the Wailing Wall. You've seen all of them, from Hillary to Barack Obama to everybody. They have to go over there and get blessings, get that K for kosher stamped on their behind, and they will come back to run for office in the United States. That's basically what it boils down to. So let's hear from the American representative right after the votes. Now, the whole world was in jubilation. They loved the fact of what happened, that, hey, Palestine is a state now. It's not disputed land. But the United States, listen to what the United States said.
Today's unfortunate and counterproductive resolution places further obstacles in the path to peace. That is why the United States voted against it. The backers of today's resolution say they seek a functioning, independent Palestinian state at peace with Israel. So do we. But we have long been clear that the only way to establish such a Palestinian state and resolve all permanent status issues is through the crucial, if painful, work of direct negotiations between the parties. This is not just a bedrock commitment of the United States. Israel and the Palestinians have repeatedly affirmed their own obligations under existing agreements to resolve all issues through direct negotiations, which have been endorsed frequently by the international community. The United States agrees strongly. Today's grand pronouncements will soon fade, and the Palestinian people will wake up tomorrow and find that little about their lives has changed, save that the prospects of a durable peace have only receded. The United States, therefore, calls upon both the parties to resume direct talks without preconditions on all the issues that divide them.
Well, the whole world is wrong, and only the United States and Israel are right. So, what happened is an obstacle to peace. So the world recognizing that, hey, the Palestinian people, it's about time that we try to do something with their suffering. But yet Susan Rice thinks it's an obstacle to peace. Well, what they should do, they should negotiate. Really? They have been. And you know what happened since they've been negotiating? Palestine is evaporating, or has evaporated, and still is. So since 1993, when the Palestinians have entered into a peace agreement, now you remember Clinton, the same Clinton, yes, Hillary's husband, when he, on the White House lawn, he has actually signed, and you remember that very famous handshake between Yasser Arafat and Ishaq Rabin. That was back in 1993 when the Palestinians said, yes, you are a country, you are Israel, and we want to live side by side with you in peace. Let's do it. So they agreed on, well, let's take 5 years, and by the 5th year, the end of the 5th year, there will be a viable Palestinian state. That would have been 1998. But it did not happen. 1998 came. Netanyahu was in power. He went and committed a massacre in Hebron. And he told Yasser Arafat, if you dare to go to the UN to say, hey, look, the 5 years, because Yasser Arafat was saying, 5 years are over. Where's the state? Netanyahu threatened him that if he goes, he will have the West Bank, it will have 5,000 tanks sitting there. So Arafat did not do it. And they went into negotiations after negotiations. Now, in the meantime, while Israel was saying, we're negotiating, they were doing what? They were bombing, they were killing, they were confiscating land, they were taking Palestinian, not prisoners of war, but there's like 15,000 Palestinians in Israeli jails without a charge. Now, that is a country that went into another country, another people, and started killing and arresting, and no one can do anything to it. See, this is how screwed up this whole United Nations system is. That because Palestine was not a recognized country within that system, we couldn't do anything. Then Israel for 65 years killing these people, bringing these thugs from all over the world, and settling them, telling them to go and get on top of the mountains in the West Bank, building them all these elaborate structures called settlements. And settlements, they're not like a bunch of tents, in Oklahoma territory. No. Settlements, buildings, huge apartment buildings, filled with nothing but thugs with guns, killing the Palestinians. Now, in 1993, when they signed the agreement, there was about 30,000 of those illegal settlers, put that in quotation, running around. In 1993, the Palestinians negotiated and negotiated and gave in and gave in. And what happened? Well, I don't want to say nothing, because something did happen. They killed Yasser Arafat. Israel poisoned him. They killed many Palestinians. There's nothing left. As a matter of fact, right now, if you say, okay, Palestine, let's have a country, I don't believe there will be a viable state, because right now what is left for the Palestinians are chunks here and chunks there, with a wall around each one of them, with Israel controlling the areas in between, and in the meantime controlling their water, controlling their electricity, taking away their taxes, controlling the borders, controlling who goes in and out, controlling the livelihood of these people, period. That's what happened, Susan Rice. It's not that the Palestinians don't want to sit down and negotiate. They did that. You do the math from 1993 to 2012. You do the math. What happened? The United States? The United States did what? The United States did nothing but help the Israelis do what they're doing to the Palestinians. Because everyone who wants to be even a janitor, if it has to do with voting, he will tell you the security of Israel is number one on my agenda. Why? Because that's how it happens. Our system is being controlled. Our voting system, our ballot boxes, it's being controlled by these special interests. These special interests have money. You need money to win. They have the media, because I'll tell you what, if they turn the media against you, you're dead. Now, who controls the media? They do. So our politicians, they can't. They cannot speak their mind. They're gutless, because they have only one consideration: I want to win. Even if it's over the bodies of little Palestinian children and over their skulls, I want to win. It doesn't matter. Now, when our politicians say, we share the values, you've heard that before, we share Israel's values. What values are those? Stealing, cheating, lying, killing, bombing? What values do you share with these Israelis? That's what I want to know. Are these the values of the United States? I guarantee you, none of you sitting there saying, yeah, no, it's not. Because you're not like that. You are not like that. If you are a human being, not a politician, there's no way on earth that you can be on the side of wrong. The side of wrong is the side of wrong. Now the Israelis will say, oh, we want peace. Let's sit down. Come sit down and do what? After 20 years of sitting down and doing what? You know, at one time, I had actually said this on this program. It's like someone steals at school, a bully, and we all know what those are. At school, he steals a hamburger of another child and starts eating it. Then the child goes to the teacher, the United States, and says, hey, look, he stole my hamburger. Then the teacher comes, he knows he's a bully. The teacher is scared of him, scared of this bully, and he goes and says, Mr. Bully, let's talk about this. Now, while the bully is eating the hamburger, and this little child is crying and being beaten up in front of the teacher by the bully, and the teacher just sitting there and saying, can we talk about this? Can we sit down and talk about this? In the meantime, the little child that's being beaten up is watching his hamburger being devoured by this bully. And the United States looks at him and says, well, you need to come and talk to him. Talk to him about what? There's nothing left of that hamburger. That's exactly what is going on. That is the reality on the ground. So what the world had said, wait a minute, there is Palestine, there are Palestinian people. Right now, it doesn't really mean much, but it does mean a lot. It doesn't mean much on the ground because Israel still occupies Palestine militarily. But it does mean a lot to the Palestinians. Now, the whole world recognizes that yes, you are people, yes, you are a state, and yes, you are an occupied state by a foreign power. And that's against the law, against United Nations law. And that is the first step to actually go to. Once you become that, then the next step is to become a full member. But there's another reason why the Israelis are afraid of this Palestinian state. It's not like this Palestinian state all of a sudden going to have these F-18s and F-22s and bombs and all this stuff and bomb the heck out of Israel. No, it's not. It's not. Israel is afraid that now, once this became a state, then they can take us to court. You see, the Palestinians before, they tried to go to the International Criminal Court. They tried to take these Israeli thugs, generals, and prime ministers who actually ordered the killings of these people. The Palestinians went to the International Court, Criminal Court, and they said, well, we see your problem. We can't do anything with it. You're not a state. So just because they're not a state, Israel can kill them. Now the Palestinians can actually take these Israeli criminals, warmongers, children's murderers to court. Then there will be warrants for their arrest. Now, it also, even though it's international court, criminal court, but also it's going to take a political will to actually do what's right. That's what Israel is afraid of, that the Palestinians will be taking these generals who committed genocide against the Palestinians to court and do what they did with Slobodan Milosevic, the Serbian guy. But that was on the other side of the political control or the political divide, so they can do that to him. But they can't do that to an Israeli. But now they can. Are they going to do it? We don't know. But the main thing that actually happened with this is that land is Palestine, occupied by a foreign power. And it puts Israel, it changes the game. For 65 years, Israel had a free hand. Now, it's going to continue having this free hand unless there is a power to say, wait a minute, you can't do that. Now, by the way, France was one of the countries that voted yes. And they explained. It's like, look, we've talked about two-state solutions. We believed in two-state solutions. This is the least we can do to put Palestine on the road to a state, to become a state. Now, the United States have been talking about two-state solutions. They have been talking about, but they have been talking, that's it. The United States cannot do anything, even though everybody thinks that they have the power. Well, in a way they do, but they can't use it because that power is in the hands of Zionists in the United States, and therefore our politicians cannot do anything with it. So that's where the problem is. All our politicians, and we had interviewed congressmen and senators on this program, those who were brave enough to come and tell us, how is it up there in Washington? AIPAC is in control of our political agenda, our foreign agenda. And what AIPAC says, America does. Because that's how it works. Other countries, even though there are or there is Zionist influence, but other people are still free to decide. You know, England abstained, that's fine. Germany did the same thing, that's fine. Many of the other countries that abstained actually are mainly the countries of the old Soviet bloc that kind of broke away from the Soviet Union, many like Romania and others, and Albania, because these countries are very much still economically dependent on the West, dependent on the United States. And the United States was able to actually say, okay, well, they said, we're not going to vote no, but we will abstain. And the United States said, fine. Now, as a matter of fact, the Netanyahu government thinks that the United States could have done better. They could have done better than what they did, because they could have pressured many countries, and they could have pressured Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, to actually not go through with it. But I tell you what, if they did, that wasn't going to be good for America. And the thing is that Mahmoud Abbas made the decision that I don't care, even if you're going to shoot me at the doors of the United Nations, I am going to the United Nations and I'm going to ask the world to recognize us. And that's what he did. That's what he did. And that's when Palestine was born. Palestine is the 194th state, number 194. Incidentally, the United Nations resolution in 1947, the number of that resolution was 194. So it just happened that Palestine 194 UN petition to create Palestine. Remember, the United Nations voted the partition of that land. 46% of the land was going to be Palestine. But now, probably about 10%. Even with that, the Palestinians said, look, we're not asking for 1947. We're just, that's fine. This is here, the West Bank, Gaza, that's fine. We can live with you. You know, land, it's not going anywhere. People change. And anything that is inferior does not last. Anything that is foreign, it does not last. You know, that land was occupied by powers for hundreds of years. 1,000 years, 1,200 years. Where are those powers? So to a Palestinian like me, I know where Palestine is. I know where Haifa and Akka are. I know where Jerusalem is. I know where Nablus and Hebron and Jenin and the rest of Palestine. That's Palestine. Now, who lives on that? Hey, if they can coexist, that's fine with me. Just don't kill me. Live with me. And that's what the Palestinians have been saying. Anyway, that's all we have for you. Until we see you next time, all I have time left is to say good night. Go do the right thing. Now you know what happened last Thursday that you probably did not know, because American media did not cover it, even though this thing was so huge. Anyway, good night.